Daniel in Phoenix, Arizona says, I no longer believe in heaven, hell, or God, but because of the way I was raised, I still have an intense fear of hell. How can I get over this irrational fear? I never believed in heaven, hell, or God, so I don't have that irrational fear, but I hear it's common.
It is.
How do you feel?
If I stop and think about hell for longer than about 10 seconds, I start to feel afraid of it again.
Okay. Would you say it has gotten better over the period of time? I mean, like, did it start out much worse?
Yes, it has gotten much better. I think partially being in therapy for anxiety helped.
Okay. Matt, I remember when he went to the Texas Free Thought Convention, he interviewed somebody, which is on the Nonprofits podcast, who was dealing with something called, I think, post-religious stress syndrome or something along those lines. I'm probably mangling it, but it's pretty common to worry, and I want to correct myself, because even though I've never believed in hell, I've always been steeped in it. I've always been steeped in the culture that believes in heaven and hell, and I've had, when I was a kid, I was in Alabama for a while. I had people tell me that I was going to go to hell. And because I don't believe in ruling things out, but in looking at the evidence for them, there were periods of time where I was, I did give myself over to speculation about whether hell might be real, and worried about it a little. But when there was a period when I thought there might be a God, I mean, first of all, what I know Jeff D., who wishes he was here today, has said in the past, is that when he came to the idea of, when he eventually became an atheist, first he went through a period where he was still a Christian, but at first he was terrified of hell, and then he thought it through and said, if God is supposed to be all-loving, then it cannot make sense to believe in a God who has, who condemns people to be, as Jeff so picturesquely says it, tortured forever! Just for the finite crime of non-believing in him. If there is a God like that, that God is a jerk. So Jeff first came to the conclusion that the God who tortures people forever for not believing probably doesn't exist. And then he came to the opinion that there's probably no God at all. So first of all, I would say, look into some alternate religions, or look into how many religions exist, because there are tens of thousands of different sects of different religions in the world. I think it's tens of thousands just of different Christian sects. And you should realize that even if it turned out there was a God, that wouldn't necessarily mean that hell is real or that you're going there. I always like to throw out the scenario of a prankster God who actually just likes to screw with people, and so he only sends Christians to hell. Or he only sends believers to hell, and all the non-believers go to heaven. That's highly unlikely, but there is no more evidence for the other kind of God than there is for that one. So take that, Pascal's wager.
And it's fun to think about.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice. It would be amusing being up there in heaven saying, oh man, my Christian friends probably wish they were up here saying they told me so. But if they hadn't told me so, they'd be here now. Going beyond that, I think, Erica's experience is a common one, that it gets better over time. Time heals all wounds, and also wounds all heals.
And just actively trying to not think about hell. Maybe not actively, but somehow avoiding thinking about it does help.
Okay, so just ignore it. Ignore it, and it will go away.
Yes, that.
But I'm serious about reading about alternate religions because, I mean, there's two benefits. One is you realize how many different religions believe different things that are perhaps less threatening than the weird fundamentalist Christianity that we have going on in the United States. And the other reason is when you come in contact with how many different beliefs there are, it becomes pretty obvious that, hey, if there was anything to this stuff, don't you think people would eventually be converging on recognizing things that are true instead of just making their own stuff up that none of which agrees with each other?